असतो मा सद्गमय तमसो मा ज्योतिर्गमय मृत्योर्मा अमृतं गमय. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Okay, so today we are going to jump into the basics. We're going to start with the nature of each and every planet. The way I want to do it is I want to first start with a story for each planet, and after the story, we will see what is the nature of each planet and what it stands for in astrology. Now, these stories which I'm going to tell you, these stories basically are from the the Upanishads and the Puranas, and some of the stories would seem pretty illogical, but I would say it's okay because if you remember these stories, it will save you from memorizing a lot of stuff, and that's why I like these stories. So if someone asks me, what the sun stands for, and who are the enemies of the of sun, which planets are enemies of sun, I don't actually have to mug a table or by heart a table. I actually can remember a story and then using a story, and that was the medium of teaching in the previous days. So it's important that we use the same medium of communication. Okay, so let's start off with the very first planet. It is sun. So I'm going to start off with the story. I'm going to tell this small story for sun. um, just, just trying to Yes. Okay. So the story of Sun goes like this. So the parents of the planet Sun were Kashyapa and Aditi, and Kashyapa is one of the Saptarishis. If you've read the Puranas, and Sun or Surya was married to Sanjana. So Sanjana was the wife of Surya. Now, one day it so happened that Surya and Sanjana were sitting together, and Sun was in its full glory, and Sanjana was very close to Sun. And Sanjana could not bear the heat of Surya. So what Sanjana did is that she left a shadow of herself behind, and she ran away into the forest because she couldn't just bear the heat of Surya. And the Sun was unaware of this fact that this is actually the shadow of Sanjana and it is not his real wife. And they go on to have a son, which is Shani, which is basically Saturn. So that's how basically Saturn was born, and Saturn is supposed to be the son of Surya. Now, there's one more son of the sun god, which is Yama, the god of death. The god of death is also supposed to be the son of Surya. So one day, what happens is that Surya sees that so-called Sanjana, which he thought was his wife, was not behaving properly with Yama, and that's when he realizes that actually, when he goes and confronts, and the so-called shadow of Sanjana says that I'm actually the shadow, and I'm not the real wife. I'm not your real wife, and Surya gets very upset. So he basically disowns Sanjana, and the shadow of Sanjana, and then goes into the forest to find his real wife. So this is the story why Saturn is very, like Sun and Saturn, the father and son, they actually don't get along with each other because Saturn, which is the son of Surya, does not like the fact that his own father has disowned his mother. So that is a small story just to remind us about the relationship with these two planets share, which is Sun and Saturn. So I'm sure in astrology, if you've studied before, you would have heard this tale that Sun and Saturn means the father and son don't get along and so on. But this is a good story for us to remember. So there's another thing which this story helps you in astrology is that uh, so what happened when Sun and Sanjana, they were together, and then the planet, she couldn't bear the heat. So the same concept in astrology is known as combustion. So when we say that a planet is combust, What it actually means is that, let's say that Sun and Mercury are together in one house, and we say that Mercury is combust. What does it mean? It means that they both are very close to each other. So if you see their longitudes, you will see that they are actually within 10 degrees. So if they're within 10 degrees, it means that Mercury cannot utilize its power because of the heat of the sun, and it won't be able to bestow its result. So that's just a small note on combustion as well. So let's move to the second planet. Actually, before we move to the second planet, let's just see what are the other things which Sun stands for. So Sun signifies the Atman, the self of all beings, ego, the empirical self, body, general health, father, courage, power, vitality, sense of individuality. So these are just keywords. And why I have given you all these keywords is because I actually want you to imagine a particular figure in your head. I actually want you to think that there is this person called as Sun, who's full of dynamism, who's full of radiance, who's like a fatherly figure, who just represents courage and vitality and royalty, that kind of a figure. So what does that also mean? Sun is actually our ego. So if you look at the subtle body, Sun also represents ego. So what is the downside of it? Like if they say that an individual has got a really exalted sun, what can that mean? It can mean that the person can have a lot of pride about himself, or he might think too much of himself, and you can say that the person can be opinionated, or you can also sense a bit of arrogance. So if you can really tune into these characteristics of Sun when you meet a person, just by a bit of by the impressions, you should be able to gather how much influence that energy has in a particular person. So that is very important. I'll move on to the next planet. The next planet is Moon. Now, regarding Moon, I'll first start with the story of Moon. So there was this king called Daksh, and he had 27 daughters. I think I had briefly mentioned about the story. So he gives away his 27 daughters to Moon, and the agreement was that Moon would spend one day with each daughter. But it so happened that he had a favorite wife, which was Rohini, and he would always end up, going visiting his wife Rohini, and he would neglect the other daughters. So what happened is that the other daughters went and complained to the king, saying that Moon does not spend enough time with us. So can you go? Can you tell him something? So Prajapati Daksh, he had all the powers because he's supposed to be the son of Brahma, the one of the three murtis. So he curses Moon, saying that you'll have a degenerative disease. So he actually curses him of a degenerative disease. Uh, but later on, Rohini feels bad that because of her, he's been cursed of this degenerative disease, and he goes back to the father and says that, can you do something about the curse, because I know that I'm guilty, but I will take responsibility for whatever has happened. And the father says that I can't take back the curse, but I can reduce it. So then that's how why that is a myth, that why Moon is strong for 14 days, and it starts losing its radiance for 14 days. So you have a full moon, and then you have the waning moon, and then you basically you can't see the moon in the sky. So basically, when you can't see the moon in the sky, we say that it has lost all its power. So that's a bit of a small story on Moon. What does Moon signify? Moon signifies mind, mother, feelings, emotions, moods. So everything to do with mind, and also travel. It also signifies travel. And so when Moon is afflicted, we use the word afflicted quite often in astrology. It can mean afflicted or not placed properly. What does that mean? It might mean a person can lose its mental balance, or it can also signify unsteadiness of the mind, and pessimism and those kind of things. So just to keep in mind those things. So I'll just move on to the third story. The third story is of Mars. Now, what does Mars mean? Like we know that sun represents our ego, and moon represents mind. What does Mars represent? Mars represents strength. It's a karaka for strength. Yeah, and the story of Mars. There are a couple of stories about Mars, but I will try to narrate this story. So it goes like this. So Lord Shiva was meditating one day, and he was in deep meditation, and he was actually contemplating in deep meditation because uh, he had actually uh, uh, he had actually caused some kind of annoyance to his father-in-law, who's supposed to be Daksh again. And so he was in penance, and when he was in deep meditation, what happens is that he sweats, and 3 drops of sweats actually fall on the land. And those three forms of sweat is actually supposed to represent the planet Mars. It's supposed to say that from there the planet Mars actually gives rise. So basically, Mars represents, all the strength of the Lord, and it also represents land or property, because I mean, just because of the significance of the sweat falling on the land, it also represents land and property. So what does the characteristics of Mars mean? Mars signifies strength, independence, initiative, motivation, determination, ambition, endurance. So it's basically a planet of action. That's how I would read it. So I'll just move forward to the next planet, which is Mercury. Now there are there's a very interesting story about Mercury, how Mercury was born. So Mercury is actually the son of Moon. So it so happened that before actually Mercury, we should even we should I should tell you something about Jupiter, because Jupiter is supposed to be the stepfather of Mercury. So what happens is that Jupiter is supposed to be quite a truthful planet, right? A very truthful planet, and it's supposed to be a planet of dharma. And so one day, and so basically, Jupiter was married to Tara. Tara is supposed to be the wife of Jupiter. And so one day, when Tara was preparing for, so basically, Tara had a lot of responsibilities to towards her husband, and every time she had to prepare so that he can go do his puja and everything. So Tara was pretty frustrated by this whole thing, and she didn't imagine a husband being so spiritual and everything, and she always wanted to. She was missing the fun in life. So it so happened that one day Tara decides to run away with Moon, because Moon is supposed to be this charismatic youth. So Tara runs away with Moon, and they have an illegitimate son, which is supposed to be Mercury. Now, that's how Mercury was born, and obviously, when Jupiter learns about it, Jupiter is furious about this whole thing. But it is also said that when Mercury was born and they didn't have a place to live, Venus actually, kind of gives shelter to Mercury. So Venus is supposed to be the lord of Asuras, and that's why they say that Mercury and Jupiter actually get along very well. Yeah, because Mercury is always thankful to Venus, because Venus has been that fatherly figure for Mercury. So whenever you see Mercury and Venus together, you know that they are good friends. And similarly, whenever you see Jupiter and Mercury, you know that they are not good friends, because they don't share a good father-son relationship. So that's about Mercury. Uh, okay, so now what does Mercury stand for? Mercury stands for intellect, speech, relatives, friends, and everything. So it's basically a planet of intelligence, creativity. Also, sports and travel is also associated with Mercury, but we will see how all this works later. For now, I just want you to picture this character called Mercury in your head, so it will be very useful for us when we try and apply these practices later. So now we come to Jupiter. So I think I already told you this small story of Jupiter, how Jupiter is supposed to be this planet of dharma and righteousness, right? So if you see health, wisdom, philosophy, science, religion, knowledge, and morality, ethics, righteousness. All these are keywords for Jupiter. Now, one question will come to your mind that you said intelligence is also associated with Mercury, and we also talk about wisdom and science and knowledge associated with Jupiter. So, what is the difference between the two? So, the difference is, we have to understand that Mercury represents intelligence, which is knowledge, but Jupiter also represents intellect, which is wisdom, and the knowledge of Jupiter is more profound than the knowledge you'll have uh, which Mercury would give. So I mean, when we see examples it will become much more clear. uh, let's go to the next one. Venus. Let me see if I can share a story for Venus. Venus. Uh, yes. Okay. So one story which I will share about Venus is I already told you that Venus is actually the supposed to be the guru of all the asuras, right? And Venus. So one story about Venus is he also learned from uh, uh, from a guru called Angira. Now Angira was actually the father of Jupiter. So the planet Jupiter and the planet Venus basically they learn from the same teacher, but Venus for some reason does not like Jupiter. So Venus treats Jupiter as an enemy because uh, it thinks that the guru, which is Angira, is favoring his own son and is not favoring Venus. So that's the story about Venus, why Venus and Jupiter don't get along together. Yeah. Very important to remember because you don't want to by heart all these relationships later. But with the stories, hopefully, when we go on to analyzing charts and stuff, you will start applying these principles. So, uh, what does Venus stand for? Love, beauty, harmony, spouse, lover, romance, marriage, partnership. All the soft things is what Venus stands for. Let's move on to the next one. Saturn. Okay, a lot of stories about Saturn, and we know how dreaded planet Saturn is in astrology. So I already told you one story about Saturn, which is about how um, Saturn and Sun they both are enemies. But let us see if there is any other story about Saturn. So yes, so when this episode happened between Sun and Saturn, when Sun realized that Saturn is not Sanjana's, not his real wife's son, uh, what actually happens is that Jupiter and Mars actually side with Sun, and Venus and Mercury side with Saturn. So basically, these three, Jupiter, Mercury, and Saturn, sorry, not Jupiter, Mercury. It is Venus, Mercury, and Saturn. They three are good friends. Yeah, and uh, if you see that Sun, Jupiter, Moon, and Mars, the four planets are quite, they are planets of power, right? They are planets of authority, whereas Saturn, Mercury, and Venus have more, individualistic goals. We will come to that. What I mean by that later. Now, what does Saturn stands for? We have to see that first. Saturn stands for perfection, introspection, conscience, discipline, asceticism, servant, detachment, yoga, contemplation, meditation, inner silence. So, everything to do with serving, enlightenment, perfection, and things of that sort. So basically, it's a planet of service and a planet. It's also a planet of righteousness, but in its own way. Yeah, and it's a very slow planet. It is also said that planet Saturn is actually lame, and there are different stories of why Saturn is lame. One of the stories why Saturn is lame is Yama, which is the stepbrother of Saturn, actually hates him on his leg. There's a story about that. I don't want to get into that. So Saturn is that kind of a planet, very slow, and it can be very frustrating as well. So in astrology, you would have heard that, oh, I've got the Sareswati period, which is the 7.5 years of Saturn. It can be a very frustrating time in anyone's life, those 7.5 years, especially if the energy of Saturn is not tuned in that particular person. So that's something about Saturn. Next, we go into Rahu. So I'll actually talk about Rahu and Ketu together, and I briefly mentioned a story about Rahu and Ketu as well. So when the Samudra Manthan was happening, that is, the gods and asuras were looking for the nectar after the ocean was churned. There was this asura called Swahabanu. His name is Swahabanu. I didn't remember the name when I was talking about it last time. So the asura is called Swahabanu. Swahabanu is the first person to get hold of that nectar, and the gods then devise a plan. Because they know that if the asura basically drinks of the nectar, they will become very powerful. So the god basically leaves his Sudarshan chakra, and the head separates from the body, and the head part is what is called as the planet Rahu, and the tail part is what is called as Ketu. Now, what does Rahu stands for? Rahu stands for greed, because it is trying to, if you apply the same analogy, you will realize why it is a planet of greed. So in astrology, we wherever there is Rahu, we associate it with worldliness, materialism, sudden change, because I mean there was sudden change in its life, right? Excitement, intelligence, and stuff like that. So depending on which house the planet is, they would apply one of these keywords. But it's very important to understand what it stands for, and then we can apply it properly when we'll read a particular horoscope. Now Ketu is the headless part right now, because it doesn't have a head. It basically surrenders. What does it surrenders to? It surrenders to uh, non-materialism. It is completely opposite. So it is a planet for spirituality, anything to do with obstacles to enlightenment, knowledge, uh, seclusion, asceticism, mysticism, and all those things are basically associated with Ketu. Right. So I think I've covered the 9 planets, which is very important. And what I wanted to do is I wanted to picture this image of these 9 people very nice, because you'll keep coming back to this, and you'll also have to remember the relationship between each planet. So kind of we've discussed a few relationships. So the key relationships are Sun Saturn. It's a key relationship. Jupiter Mercury is a key relationship, which we briefly spoke about. Jupiter Venus is an important relationship, which we spoke about. And we have Moon Venus, which is an important relationship, because Moon is the mother of Venus, right? So that is an important relationship. So they both are good friends. Uh, what are the other relationships? Uh, Venus Sun, they don't get along, because the last story which I mentioned to you uh, about Jupiter and Mercury, right? So Venus and Sun don't get along. So that's about a relationship. Obviously, there is a chart somewhere. So if you see, there is a chart here of a planetary relationship. So you can see Sun is good friends with Moon, Mars, Jupiter. It's neutral with Mercury, and the enemies are Venus and Saturn. And we know why it is enemy with Saturn, because Saturn and Sun, they don't get along well because of the father-son relationship, and Sun and Venus are enemies uh, because obviously Venus was on the side of Mercury and not on the side of Jupiter. So Jupiter and Sun, they both are good friends. Moon, you see, Moon and Sun, basically they are king and queens, right? So you wouldn't find too much of difference in both of them. Mars, if you look at Mars, again, it's a fiery planet. It likes the fieriness of Sun. So Mars and Sun actually get along very well. So Sun, Moon, Jupiter are the friends of Mars. Mercury and Mars don't get along for the same reason, because Mars does not side Mercury. Mercury and Moon are enemies, but it does not have a problem with Sun and Venus. Jupiter does not get
Quick
along.
question here. So
Yes, yes,
this is
tell me.
interesting.
Yes,
Mercury and Moon are enemies. Mercury does not like Moon because of the relationship with the wife or whatever, right?
correct,
But
correct, correct.
but Moon does not have any impact on that and or does not care about it and is friend with Mercury.
Yes,
So the other way around it is different.
yes, yes. You'll find this happening quite often. One of the reasons, basically, if you go by the story, you will see that actually Moon is one of the parent for Mercury, right? So the parent would not go against his child,
Right.
because Moon is always this motherly figure, like in astrology.
Yes.
So
Okay.
that's one of the ways to look at it, really. Again, Jupiter is actually a planet of dharma, but I mean, if you see, it still does. And if you see, Jupiter and Mercury and Venus don't get along. Yeah, but yeah, I mean, the stories are there for you to kind of, so that you don't have to memorize this completely.
Yes. No, that's good. Great.
Yeah, yeah. I like the stories, because otherwise, if I have to memorize these things, it can get really, boring, and that's
Yes.
how it is taught these days, actually.
Yeah.
Okay, so we need to learn this, the planet ownerships, and this is actually an exercise that we need to do. So I think this is a good time to do this exercise. Okay, what I want to do you all have a book and pen with you?
Yes, yes, I have.
Okay, great. So are you able to see my book here? If I stop sharing, maybe it will be better, right? uh,
Probably yes.
yes, let me stop sharing. Okay. uh, okay, I've stopped sharing. Can you see this book now clearly?
Yes.
Yes,
Okay, so I want you to draw this with me. Uh, right, so this is the first. I've just drawn a box. Can you see that? I've drawn a box.
Yes.
Okay,
yes,
now you draw the inner lines. So I've drawn four more lines, if you see. Okay, and now what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw these lines. Okay, so what you will get 12 boxes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Now what you do is you start naming these boxes according to their sign. So this is Aries, this is Taurus, Gemini, uh, Cancer, Leo, Virgo, Libra, Scorpio, Sagittarius, Capricorn, Aquarius, Pisces. Did you get this, or do you want me to repeat it?
Got it.
Okay,
sir,
perfect.
not visible, sir, not visible.
Okay, is it better now, madam?
No, sir, no.
Okay, what you have to do is, can you see my pen, where my pen is? Let me do one thing. Let me go back to the slide then. But this is
I
very
think
important.
share the slide and I think it will be better from that one.
Yes, 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 yes. See, basically, I'm trying to draw this chart here, the chart which you're seeing. So what I've done is that I've named these signs. Okay, and I've drawn these 12 boxes, and I've put the names of each of these signs on top of these boxes. Once you've done that, uh, we have to find out. I'm going to tell you which houses, which signs are ruled by which planets. So we should always start off with Leo. Okay, so what it is said in astrology, all these 12 houses are like, it's like a plot of land. Just imagine that it's a plot of land. The entire plot of land was owned by Sun initially. Okay, and so initially only Sun and Moon basically ruled this entire plot of land. That's why you start off with Sun and you start off with Cancer, which is occupying Moon. Then what happened is that Mercury came along. Yeah, Mercury came along and said that I want a piece of land as well. So Sun gave Virgo to Mercury, and Moon gave Gemini to Mercury. Okay, so that's how Moon basically owns Gemini and Mercury. Then Venus came along. Venus took Libra and Taurus. Then Mars came along. Mars took Scorpio and Aries. Then Jupiter came along. Jupiter took Sagittarius and Pisces. And then finally, the slowest one is Saturn, who comes and occupies Aquarius and Capricorn. So if you see Sun and Moon, they just own one house, whereas the other planets own two houses. Yeah, this is the planet ownership. One more peculiar thing to note here is if the way I've just shown you the representation, that is also the speed of the planets. Yeah. So we know that Moon is the fastest planet, right? So Moon spends 2.5 days in each house. In the galaxy, Moon rotates the quickest. Then comes Sun, then Mercury, then Venus, Mars, Jupiter, and then the slowest is Saturn. So it is important to also remember the speed of each of these planets. Uh, are you able to get this so far?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So now that we know that which planet rules which house, there is another concept called as exaltation, Mool Trikona, and debility. Let's try and understand what this concept is. Okay. So I'm just going to jump a bit. So I have this one slide. If you see this slide, what I am saying here is that what are the inputs to judge a horoscope? And now we are only talking about the very first input to judging a horoscope. What is that? We are doing a planet analysis. Now, before doing the planet analysis, we actually have to understand each planet, right? So we have done that. We've gone through the nature of all the 9 planets. We've understand how the friendship between each of those planets work, and now we are on the doing the very first thing is we are trying, we also have to know the strength of each planet. Now the strength of each planet, there are 6 ways to determine the strength of each planet. Now if you want me to name those 6 strengths, they are called as the sthana bala, chesta bala, kala bala, drik bala, dig bala, and uh, Naisargik bala. So there are 6 types of strengths, but now I'm not going to go into the details of each of those 6 types of strength. I'm only going to talk about one strength. Now that just if you know how to find out that one strength, uh, your 70% of the job is done, because that is one of the most important things. Yes, I'll basically talk about 2 strengths. One is the sthana bala, and I will also talk about directional strength. So even if you know about these 2 strengths, that will cover uh, the majority aspect of the strength. So what it says that sun, the rulership of sun is in Aries, is in Leo, but its exaltation point is 10 degrees in Aries. Correct. So what I wanted you to do initially was, I'm just going to stop sharing for now. Okay. And if you look at my book again, I actually wanted you to first write the ownership. So if I have to write the ownership, I'm just going to quickly do that. Sun, Moon, Mercury, Mercury. Then comes Venus, Venus, Mars, Mars, Jupiter, Jupiter, Saturn, Saturn. So these were the ownerships, initial ownerships, and then I wanted to also write all the exaltations above this one. So if you just do that, above each boxes, if you can even write these exaltations, that will be very helpful. So you should basically get a chart which looks something similar to this. This is from my previous session which I did. Okay, are you able to see the chart by any chance?
No, sir. No. Not clear.
Okay, you're not able to see it, right? Let me do one thing. Let me take a picture and send it to you. Maybe that will help. Okay, I'm just trying to do that. I'm going to take a quick picture and send it to you on the WhatsApp. So what I want you to do is I want you to draw that same chart, and once you've drawn that chart, uh, you should try and enlarge it and uh, you know stick it somewhere, maybe on your fridge or on your wherever you sit for studying, right? You should try and have this as a ready reference, because this is the key. This is the absolute key. I've already sent you a picture of that figure, right? So this is the exercise which I wanted to do today, and this is very important. Hmm? Did you get that picture by any chance? Are you able to look at that?
Yeah, yeah, sir.
Yes.
Okay. In fact, yeah. So if you can look at that picture, so if you just draw that picture and stick it somewhere, that will be really good. Okay. So let's go back to our presentation now. Actually, before I go back to the presentation, any questions? Because I've been going really fast today because I wanted to, I thought of covering a lot of things, so I'm going really quick. But any questions?
Sir,
Any
hello.
questions? Yes, yes. Tell me, I can hear you.
Sir, Aditya is not possible to hear you. Aditya,
Okay, what I will do is I will share the video with him because it looks like he's got a weak internet connection. So I will send him the video and maybe I'll catch up with him later. Yeah.
okay, sir. Sir, wait.
Uh,
I'm just conveying him message.
sure, sure, no problem. But in the meanwhile, do you have any questions for me? So from whatever we've discussed now.
No, sir.
Oh,
Continue.
okay. So I will continue now. Right. So yes. So there is another concept that we need to discuss before we move forward. That is a concept of benefic and malefic. Okay. Now the concept of benefic and malefic goes this way. A planet can give good results and can give bad results. Correct. So what determines whether the planet is going to give good results or bad results? One is the inherent nature of the planet. Like, for example, Sun, Moon, Mars, Jupiter. These four planets are basically authoritative planets. What does it mean by authoritative planets? Uh, uh, just, if someone has got a strong Jupiter or a strong Sun or say a strong Mars in the horoscope, it can negate quite a lot of the effects of other planets. So it is quite an authoritative planet. Yeah, that is one thing we should all remember. So I'll give you a small example to just you know make this point more clear. So about a few years back, when I was discussing the chart of Amitabh Bachchan, quite a long time back, actually, at least 10 or 15 years back. Uh, we were looking at the chart of the Bollywood actor Amitabh Bachchan, and we all know his story, right? In 1993, he had a very major accident during the shooting of the movie Coolie, and so when he was admitted to hospital, he was taking blood samples, and when he was taking blood samples, he was infected with hepatitis B, and he has only 25% of liver left at that point of time. And even then, when he had his accident, nobody knew whether he's going to survive or not. Now, when we're looking at his chart, very striking thing is that his sixth house had Jupiter in it. Yeah, it had Jupiter in it, and Jupiter was very strong. So when I say exaltation, means it is a strong planet. So, uh, so there are two ways of looking at it. Like 15 years back, I said, does astrology really work? Because if Jupiter is there in the sixth house, uh, why did you go through such a serious accident? Shouldn't Jupiter protect the sign? But the way it works is that you have a ruler of the sign, right? So if I go back to this picture here, you have a ruler of the sign. So you can see Cancer, right? Cancer is the sign where Cancer is the sign which is ruled by Moon, but that is a sign where Jupiter is exalted. So if you see this particular table where it says Jupiter and it says exaltation, at 5 degrees Cancer is where Jupiter is exalted. And if you look at Amitabh Bachchan's horoscope, he's got Jupiter at 0 degrees of Cancer, 0 point some a minute. So it is very close to the 5 degrees of Cancer, which makes Jupiter a really exalted planet and really strong. Yeah, in the sixth house. Sixth house is supposed to be there for diseases, and it's a house of sustenance basically. So at that point of time, if someone would have asked this question that is Amitabh Bachchan going to survive this serious accident, that is he going to remain alive? Well, we know what has happened, right? He's alive. He survived through that incident. Not only survived, he's 78 years old now, and he's still surviving, right? And he's still surviving with just 25% of his liver. And what is funny is that we see people dying here with COVID, and he was infected with COVID, right? And he and his son both were infected with COVID, but nothing seemed to bother his health, right? Even with a 25% liver. Very surprising. And the only explanation to that, if you look in astrology, is Jupiter being in the sixth house and exalted. So that is how important strength of the planets are. And Jupiter, Mars, Sun, these are authoritative planets. Just by the sheer strength of these planets, it can give immense uh, good things to a particular horoscope. Yeah. But just a note of caution again here, uh, the teachings of astrology are pretty direct, right? So there is always this temptation to go and apply whatever principles that we've learned here in our own charts or in any other charts that we are seeing. But that is a very big mistake, because we should not apply you should not go and just apply one principle to the chart. We have to look at charts holistically, because I have seen charts where the planets are debilitated, right? Really weak, but still the native is fine. I mean, there's nothing wrong with the native. Why? Because there might be other planets which are supportive. Yeah? And it might affect one area of the life, but the other areas of the life are still fine. So it is very important to look at it very holistically. That is the point which I want to make. Okay, any questions on the ownership and the exaltations and the debilitation? So basically exaltation is where the planet gains strength. Mult Trikona is where the planet can really function well, and debility is where the planet loses strength. Yes, that's how I would read it, and that's how I would want you to read it. Now, why I'm really emphasizing on all these things, because if you look at the modern day softwares, right? The modern day softwares will calculate the strength and planet and give you. So it will say that this planet's strength is 110% or 120%. It will give you a strength. And what modern day astrologers do, they go by merely the chart. They will see that, oh, this planet is 110%. That is what my software tells me. But that is a mistake. You're making a mistake. Why you're making a mistake? Because, as you know, astrology is a qualitative science. It's not a quantitative science, right? This is what my teacher used to tell me. So it is a very big mistake to try and judge everything quantitatively. You can't say that my Jupiter is 120%, so all the areas of my life will be good, which is expected with Jupiter. No, it doesn't work that way. We have to apply qualitatively. So even if Jupiter is bad, say for one house, it might be very good for the other house. So it has to be looked at holistically. So even a planet which is a malefic planet, right? So next concept which I'm going to talk about is malefic and benefic. What is malefic? Malefic planet, the ways of a what is malefic? Malefic means the ways are not very pleasing. And what is benefic? Benefic means the ways are pleasing. Like for example, um, a good example is, let's say, the fourth house. The fourth house stands for all the good things, right? It stands for the mother, it stands for the family, the love which you gain from the family, and all those things. But let's say that you have a badly placed Mars in the fourth house, right? It's you have Mars there, and Mars is a malefic planet. It can mean aggression. It can mean aggression because Mars is the planet of aggression, strength. So you don't want a planet which is aggressive to go and sit in your fourth house because it can destroy the peace of the house, right? Again, not to take it very literally, just don't open a horoscope and say, oh, there is Mars in the fourth house, means there is aggression and there's going to be heated arguments in the house. No, that's how you don't read it that way. But uh, I just wanted to give you an example of what is a malefic. But if what if Mars was a benefic planet? Yeah, it means that there might be aggression, but the aggression might be for good things. Yeah, it might be for good things. So what they say that again, I have not gone into discussing the different bhavas. Let's say that you have a portfolios where you have to fight a lot of court cases, and you have to fight litigations and everything. If you have a malefic planet there, it is actually really good. Like Mars and all are good planets for sport, competitive sport. So if you look at the horoscope of say Sachin Tendulkar, he's got a really good Mars, and it is very good, very important for a sportsman to have a good Mars. Because why? One, it represents strength, and it means that it gives you the ability to conquer over your enemies. So Mars is a very important planet when you look at horoscope of sportsman. What about Sun then? Okay, sun is power, authority. So if I look at a planet of a, say, a politician, yeah, just the other day I was talking to somebody about somebody who's a politician, who's a mantri. So when I looked at his horoscope, you can immediately see that sun is very good, right? So if sun is well placed, it gives you an authoritative power. It makes you a fatherly figure, and the so basically you can now see there is a difference between the power of sun and the power of Mars. Do you see the difference? Yeah, there's a subtle difference. The power of sun is more coming out of the ego, more of pride and ego, whereas the power of Mars can even literally mean physical strength. Okay, but the power of sun is more a political strength. So sun is good, if somebody is trying into even if somebody is trying to go into the political career and stuff, sun is very good. What about Mercury? Well, we spoke about Mercury. Mercury is good for an artist because Mercury is intelligent. It also gives a bit of creativity and knowledge. Uh, and if somebody wants to become say, a news reader, right? Mercury is good because Mercury also represents speech. It represents intelligence, knowledge, well-read person. That is Mercury. How does it differ from Jupiter? I think we already discussed that a bit before. Jupiter means guru. So the knowledge of Jupiter, the wisdom of knowledge, is more from an authoritative perspective, more from a very righteousness and truthful perspective. Okay. Yes. So I think we've covered a bit. I just wanted to give a bit of examples about how you read good and bad. Uh, Okay. So, if any questions, or shall we move into understanding the house significations?
I think we can move on. Will you be covering the image that you just sent? Because there are a couple of things that at least I can't read.
This particular one, the
No,
planetary.
the one that the picture that you took and sent for the diagram or the kundli basically.
Okay. What did you not understand in that one?
Well, in that, like you're saying Jupiter, it has a nature of water, but what is just below that?
Okay. So the water and the movable is the characteristic of the sign.
Right, right.
Yeah, that is the sign. So okay, so to put that's a very good question you asked. So if you see the very first house, which is Aries, I've put Aries as fire, and I've put movable. So if you keep going, you will see that each sign represents fire, earth, air, water, fire, earth, air, water. It will keep cycling fire, earth, air, water. And each sign can be either a movable sign, fixed sign, or dual sign. Movable sign, fixed sign, dual sign. So what does that mean? That is the characteristic of a sign. How is that useful? Let's say that a planet is in the second house and it's a planet and it's in a fixed sign. Uh, and let's say that the Lagna is a fixed sign. Let's say that somebody is born as a Taurus. What does Taurus represent? Taurus is a bull, right? So it won't move from his ideology. Yeah. So it will be very fixated with his ideology. So that's how you read the movable and fixed.
Okay.
Whereas, what about Aries? Aries stands for is a movable sign, and it's a very it stands for fire. So it is a good sign. It is a good sign if somebody wants to start something new because it is a sign of initiation. That's how you read it, really. Okay. Now I want to go into this house signification. Now, if you see, I have a few slides here. I would let you go through all these slides, but I have got another interesting picture, which is this. I will actually cover this picture rather than going through this slide. So we have 12 houses, which are the 12 spheres of our life. Okay. So what are these 12 spheres? Let's see. So the first sphere, again, I don't want you to by heart all these things. That's why I like this image. If you always have this image in mind, then you don't have to by heart all these things. You can decipher most of these things by just remembering this one particular image. So let's see how. So what does the first house say? The first house says, I am aware, awareness of myself. So what is awareness of myself? Then all the things will come: appearance, outward personality, and if I go back to the uh, the slide here, what does it say? The self, Atman, innate nature, the empirical self, psychological makeup, personality, psychology, physiology, temperament, ego, constitution, character, complexion, dignity, sense of self worth, general welfare. It's all about the self. Okay. What does the second say? Here it says that second is the house of wealth, dana, and you've got certain keywords here. It says wealth, speech, family, domestic happiness, gems, precious metal. But how would I decipher it? Number two, what does it says? Money, possessions, value, skills. I have personal resources, right? So if you see, if you just remember these this particular chart, you will be able to decipher quite a lot of things. So let's take another example. If I say if I say education, what are the spheres of life which are to do with education? uh, the fifth house, you can see, right? I serve personal creativity. That is one thing. And if you see the third house, what does it say? Mental activity, learning, communication. Because what does it represent? I think, immediate environment. So whenever you say that this particular aspect of my life has got to do with the environment or knowledge or something, then it is a third house. But also the fifth house is connected because the fifth house represents creativity, right? So that is how you see. But if someone wants to know about philosophy and religion and the higher types of things, then you have to look at the ninth house, because ninth house is more about exploration, expanding horizons and stuff. Okay. So quickly, let's go through all the 12 houses. Number one is the represents the body, and it represents the self, innate nature, empirical self, and stuff. And also to remember that each of these houses are categorized as either dharma, artha, kama, moksha, and it will keep cycling. So you can see the first house is the house of dharma. Dharma means the house of righteousness. uh, let's move to the second house. Second house represents dana, or wealth. uh, I think we already discussed that, right? So I'll just move to the third one. Third one is represents desires, actions, motivations, interest, hobbies, sports, pleasures, and everything. So it's a house of karma. It's a house of pleasure. Yeah. Fourth one, it's the house of family, relatives, mind, emotion, because the mind, emotion, and everything is very closely connected to the family, and it's a house of moksha, which is liberation. So the way you read moksha here is liberation. It's very liberating when you spend time with the family. You forget everything else. That's how you read it. Fifth house stands for, say, creation, right? Creation or creativity, right? So, inclination of the mind, intellect, creative intelligence, knowledge, education, knowledge, mantras, tantras, all those things. Sixth stands for enemy, or rather than enemy, I would say it's a house of sustenance. Yeah, worries, anxieties, obstacles, enemies, challenges, tests. So you see that it does not have really good keywords, and that is basically sixth for. It is not a very good house. So we will come to the differentiation of houses later, but I just want to quickly go through these. Seventh house stands for relationship, husband, wife, partner, marriage, business partner, and everything to do with partnership and relationship is the seventh house, and is the house of karma. Again, pleasure. uh, Eighth house, it's again a house of liberation. Not a very good house again. If you see the keywords, it says longevity, transformation, candles, calamity, danger, accidents, enemy conflicts, and everything, death. So all the unwanted things are there in the eighth house. Nine stands for again a house of dharma. It stands for fortunes, wisdom, philosophy, a lot of good things in the ninth house. 10th house stands for again the house of action, that is karma, activity, occupation, profession, career, reputation, prestige. It's the house of action. Anything to do with action is the house of is the 10th house. 11th house is the house of gains. It's again a house of pleasure, house of karma, income gains, long-term desires, profits of all articles, prosperity, and stuff. 12th house is a house of liberation. So it says losses and waste, loss of relativity, etc. But you should again treat as a house of liberation. Now, see, there is a lot of things mentioned here, but how do we apply it to a particular horoscope or a particular situation? That is where the real skill lies. Yeah, but it is good to know all these things. So we should know all these things, because otherwise, when we go to the application in a particular chart, then I will tell you how to apply which keyword to pick and apply to the particular chart. We will come to that later. Okay. Now this is very important. Bhava categorization. One thing you would have noticed that the 1, 4, 7, 10 houses, they are called as Kendra houses, or they're called as pillars, the pillars of any chart. What does that mean? If so, the first thing when I look at a horoscope, obviously I would look at what are the things I will look at. I will first do a planet analysis. I will check whether the planet is strong, whether it is a beneficial planet. I will check the relationship of the planet. I will check the affection of the planet, and then I will put a very important point here. I will check whether how are the Kendra houses, because the Kendra houses are the pillars basically of a chart. So if I see that the Kendra houses are not very good, then I know that the horoscope as such is weak, right? It is basically the pillars are the foundation to anyone's life. So what are the four pillars? The self, which is the body, the family, your relationship, and your career. And you will see that anytime somebody approaches you, they will approach you for either one of these four things, right? So either people have a problem with their career, relationship, uh, or say anything to do with their body or their mind. So the four houses are very important. These are the Kendra houses. Which are the bad houses? Obviously, we got a bit of a taste of them in the previous slides. The bad houses are the 6, 8, 12 houses. Why are they bad? because they represents all the unnecessary things of life, which are obstacles, enemies, litigations, liberation, death. So Dushastanas are not very good houses. So if you see that, in anyone's house, if the Dushasthanas are playing an important role, you know that there is a lot of pain in that person's horoscope. Again, uh, so that is how you look at it. And then you've got the third part, which is the uh, which are the trikonas. What are the trikonas? The fifth and ninth houses. The fifth and ninth house are the most auspicious houses because all the good things, if you see, are happening via the sixth, fifth, and ninth house. So it is a planet of joy because all the knowledge which you're gaining and all the fun you're having is basically the fifth and ninth house. So they're supposed to be the most uh, auspicious houses, the trikonas. And then you have another set of houses which are called as the Trishadaya houses. Trishadaya houses are the 3, 6, 11 houses, which I won't go too much into that, but they're not very good houses. 3, 6, 11. Okay, 6 we already know they are not very great house. 11th, it's a house of giving. It always gives you a lot, but it should always be in measure, because if there is too much of pleasure in anyone's horoscope, it can represent something sudden which is going to happen. So, and there is a deep connection between each houses. So there is a concept called as bhavat bhavam, which we will discuss in a separate session. But I will take a pause here to just take some of the questions, because these are all very complicated topics, but I've really brushed through them quickly. So if I can take questions, that way I can explain them even more better. So are there any questions? You can even type them in the chat box if you want.
Still trying to digest the information.
Okay, so where should I start from? I know these are not very difficult to. These are quite. I mean, these are stuff which needs to be discussed over a few sessions. But if you can tell me which points I need to talk about more, we can take it from there. Okay, so let's try and. So the house significations, Rajani Madam, are you comfortable with the house significations? I mean, what each house stands for? I'm not sure whether.
So,
Yes, tell me.
so can you explain eighth house?
Eighth house. Okay, so this is a good chart actually to start off with. So what does it say for the eighth house? Eighth house says it's the house of death, money sharing, and longevity. So basically, it's a house of shared resources. So it's not a very pleasant house. Why is it not a very pleasant house? Because events related to the eighth house happen pretty suddenly. Yeah, but eighth houses, I agree, it's not a very easy house to understand. But when we actually look at charts, you will realize that you know, it is a house of obstacles. But it has to all have to be looked into a context. So when we actually start looking at charts, it will become more clear. Yeah, but for now, just keep it in mind that it is a house of longevity and you know resources basically. Yeah, that's a good way to put it. And if you see, there are some keywords as well for the eighth house. It says it's the vulnerable point. Okay, it's a house of transformation. That's where the changes in your life happens basically.
Okay, sir.
Are the other houses clear? What are the purpose of the other houses?
Yeah, I will gradually know. It will require practice.
Yes, yes, it will require practice. I completely agree. It will require practice. Okay. So now, okay, since we have discussed the houses and we've discussed a bit of the planet, let us talk about malefics and benefics, right? So I'm going to do something. I'm going to share a chart. Just going to stop sharing this thing, and I'm going to share a chart, and we can start discussing some more deeper concepts. Okay, this is a good chart. Okay, can you see my screen?
Yeah.
Okay, I don't want to confuse you with the Bhava chart for now. So let's just look at this chart. So this is a sample chart which I have in front of me. Okay. Uh, uh, so I'm just going to try and explain a very a concept, which is the concept to do with maleficness and beneficness of the planet. So first, you can write this note down. So what are the malefic planets? The malefic planets. So basically, there's a concept of natural malefic and natural benefic, and there's a concept of temporal malefic and temporal benefic. Let's see what it means. So, Sun, Mars, Saturn are malefics, which are natural malefics. Yeah, when I'm talking now, it's natural malefics. The benefics are Venus, Mercury. I'll put Moon as well here. Actually, Moon. Okay, and Jupiter. These four planets are naturally benefic planets. Now, is this concept of benefic and malefic clear to you, or do you want me to give
Yeah.
take talk? It is clear, right? So malefic means it is not very good. Benefic means it will give good results. Okay. Now, what does natural malefic and natural benefic means? Means it is a natural tendency of the planet to give you good results, and natural tendency of the planet to give you results which are not very desirable. So its ways of teaching can be pretty nasty. That is what it means. Okay. Now, so the first rule which I'm going to tell you. So now I'm going to talk about a lot of rules. So it's that's why I said that you need to have a book and pen to write down these rules. So the first rule which I'm going to give you, that any planet which rules the first, fourth, seventh, and 10th house, they change their characteristics. Yeah, what does that mean? If Sun is a natural malefic, if it rules either the 1, 4, 7, 10 house, the 1, 4, 7, 10 house are Kendra houses. If it rules those houses, it will change from being a malefic into a benefic. Okay, and the vice versa is also true. If any benefic rules one of the Kendras, its natural benefic, rather than being a natural benefic, it becomes a temporal malefic in the horoscope. Any questions on this rule, which I've just mentioned?
So please explain it in general terms.
Okay. Now let's actually let's look at it practically. Okay. Now, if you look at this particular horoscope, you're able to see this horoscope in front of the screen, right? You can see that in one of the houses, I've got AS. Now, what is that AS house where there is AS? That is the sign of Cancer, correct? The If you look, that's why I said you have to go back to that basic chart. If you look at this particular thing, which sign, where is the sign where we have AS? What is that sign where we have AS? That is the ascendant, right? AS means it is the ascendant, but it is in which sign? It is in the sign of Cancer, correct?
Okay, okay.
It is the sign of Cancer, right? Where you have got AS,
Okay.
right? So if if basically Cancer is the lagna, that becomes the first house. Okay. Now, uh, so if we apply this rule of 1 4 7 10, what happens to the 1 4 7 10? Uh, it should change its maleficness to beneficness for the Kendras. So let's see. So basically, who rules the fourth house? The fourth house is ruled by Venus, which is the fourth house. So you have to start counting from ascendant. So the first house is Cancer, second house is Leo, third house is Virgo, fourth house is Libra. Okay, that's how you count. So the fourth house is a Kendra house which is ruled by Libra, and we have to find out who is the owner of Libra. I already gave you the chart before. Who is the owner of Libra? Libra is owned by Venus, right? Are you able to understand?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So if Libra is owned by Venus, by this particular Kendra rule, what happens to Venus? If is Venus a benefic or is Venus a malefic? Venus becomes a malefic in this horoscope. Why it becomes a malefic? Because Venus is a natural benefic, but in this horoscope it becomes a malefic.
Yeah, yeah, I got.
Okay,
Natural malefic.
okay, you got it right. What happens to say Jupiter? Which house does Jupiter? Which are the two signs which are ruled by Jupiter? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. The sixth house, which is Sagittarius, is ruled by Jupiter. Seventh, eighth, ninth. The ninth house, which is ruled by Pisces, is also ruled by Jupiter. Correct?
Okay.
So sixth and ninth are ruled by Jupiter. So it does not change its functionality. So it still remains a natural benefic for this horoscope. Okay, but I'm going to give you all the rules. So the first rule is that any planet which rules 4 7 10 changes its benefic and malefic nature. The second rule is any planet which rules 1 5 9 are always benefic. Okay, so 1 5 9 is always benefic irrespective of so the Kendra rule does not apply for that. So these are the only two rules actually, which we have to know. So I think what we will do is, I think I'm going to end here today, unless you have any other questions. Yeah, because what I would want you to do is, I would want you to go through the presentations again today. I will send you the other image as well, and if you can do some reading on benefic and malefic, that will be good. So that next time what we will do is we will directly open a chart and we will try to identify benefics and malefics in the horoscope. Will that work? Is that okay?
Yeah, I think that is better.
Yeah, I think that is better because I don't want to overload you with more information. So we will just break here today. Let me just stop this. Uh, yes.